welcome back to KSP 101. We're going to be picking up where we left off last time. We're going to be doing a contract to explore the Mun. In this case, we're going to be flying by the Mun and returning to Kerbit from the flyby. When we last left off, we had just upgraded the launch pad. That way we can launch more than 18 tons. Now we're up to 140 tons. And we still have a decent chunk of change left to build the vessel or check for any other upgrades that we might want. In this case, I think it's time to go ahead and upgrade mission control as well. And next we're going to be aiming to upgrade the tracking station as well as the R&D facility, but it's going to be a little costly to upgrade that one, so we'll see what we can do in this episode. But for now, let's go to the VAB and start working on this Mun vessel. Now, a Mun Flyby, which pertains to flying by the Mun, which means getting within the gravitational influence of the Mun. As soon as you do, that qualifies as a flyby, but we also have to return from it, so let's go on ahead and make a vessel that is capable of doing that. We'll start off by loading up this R1-A vessel that we had created. It's a good start. Now, first thing we're going to do, checking our weight here, we're going to get rid of this solid booster. Now, we still have about, I want to say about 5 tons worth of mass that we can add on to this. So what we're going to do is extend this bottom stage. Now let's go on ahead and get rid of this. We're going to keep the top stage here exactly how it is, because we're going to be using all this science while we're in space, particularly when we get to a point where we're high above Kerbin, because we've already got all the space near Kerbin, and of course the space around the Mun, which we're going to try to probably achieve an orbit around the Mun, like a very quick, simple orbit, and then boost it back prograde to where we escape the Mun, and then make it back to Kerbin. Now, we have some new parts to play with, particularly these struts. They're very useful, but that also allows us to do what's called auto strutting with these parts. So all of the parts that we already have in this vessel, we need to go through an auto strut. Now, usually almost every single part that you're going to put down is going to be set to grandparent part, unless it has what's called a reaction control wheel. If it has a reaction control wheel in the part, I usually like to set it to heaviest. Now I'm going to go ahead and set the rest of these to grandparent part. Go on ahead and knock that out real fast. What that's going to do is provide a lot more stability in case we start to lose control or we want to fend off the Kraken, and so it doesn't completely break apart whenever it reaches certain G-forces, especially in like the lower atmosphere. Now, engines I will always set to root part. So that's basically how I use the auto strut. Grandparent part for most parts, root part for engines, and anything with a reaction control wheel usually set to heaviest. Unless I'm using more than one reaction control wheel, but we'll get to that whenever the time comes. Now, let's build this bottom stage. One moment, need to check on something. Okay, I'm back. Now let's finish building this bottom stage. Need to make sure that it's no larger than, say, well, it is going to be in space actually, so now we can really use this swivel to its full potential, which is the ability to push about 21 tons efficiently. So let's go ahead and make this stage a little bit heavier this time. But we don't want to make it too heavy because then it'll be too large. I think one more should do it. So it's pretty large. I'm kind of worried about the integrity of the vessel, but we'll go ahead and go with that. Now, set this to root, and I forgot to set the initial one to grandparent, so I'm going to make this easier on myself by setting the first one to grandparent, and then copying that again. That way I don't have to go through and individually set each one of them to grandparent. And let's put one more on. And then put this back down here. Make sure it's set to root. Okay, that's a pretty massive stage, but it works. Well, you know what? Let's actually go ahead and separate that into two different stages. We'll do it at the halfway point, put another swivel on here, add the decoupler, and then put that back on. Then we just have to check our staging, make sure that it's set up properly still. Okay, good. Now we need to raise this up just a hair, that way we can see what we're doing down here. Excellent. Alright, now already this vessel is just a hair better than the last one, the original R1A. Going to call this one the R2. We'll go ahead and rename that, save it. Okay, now let's see what all stuff we have to work with as far as all these new parts go. Hey, yeah, we have some new solar panels that we need to add to our capsule here. I'm just going to, alright, from the center, which is where the goo is, I'm going to move it over 2 spots. Try to put the arrow in the center of that, and then I'm going to set it to radial 2 and go over here to this side and do the same thing. Now we have some solar panels, and they won't get in the way of the hatch, so we can exit the vehicle and EVA in space to collect our data if we need, or our science. And see what other new parts we have to work with that we're actually going to use. I'm not seeing much. Okay, now we can finally get around to using these radial decouplers. So let's find a nice spot for these, and we're gonna probably just stick to using the swivels. Go ahead and add 4 of those, set those to grandparent. The thing about the solar panels, I don't believe they have to be auto strutted. Same thing with some of the science, like the thermometer and the barometer. As you can see, there's no setting for those, so, and actually whenever you try to bring up the barometer, it just doesn't do anything at all. So same for the thermometer. Now back down to these radial decouplers. Let's go on ahead and add the fuel tanks onto these and auto strut those to grandparent. We can copy those, put 1 up, 1 down, another one up, and another one down. Now here's the thing, I'm going to want to try to use these 4 outer stages to push the entire rocket, and then we're going to kick those and use this central stage. However, let's do the math here. These swivels, if you take its thrust in the atmosphere, which is 167.969, and multiply that by 4, it's able to push a minimum of about 67 tons, and right now it's at 72, so we're going to have to get rid of some of this weight. Let's get rid of these top ones. There we go. Now we'll be able to push the entire vessel and not have to use any of this central staging. That is, until we get some fuel tank lines. Once we get the fuel tank lines, oh, it's going to be fantastic. But until we get those, we have to do it this way. So let's stage this properly, make sure that we have those 4 outer stages, and then they kick and activate the central stage. And now we're looking good. Alright. Hello. Let's go ahead and save our progress, and for the sake of aerodynamics, we are going to need some nose cones on top of all 4 of these boosters. There we go. And we'll auto strut those to grandparent. Let's make sure everything is strutted properly. Now, outside of auto strutting, let's go on ahead and place some of these struts up here to connect all four of these together. And then we're also going to need to do the same thing towards the bottom. The thing about that is we have to fool around to where we can get rid of that part window and see what we're doing. Alright, so let's stick these down here. And then we're going to want to make sure that each and every one of those have a little more stability with the rocket itself. Gonna aim closer towards the center. Stick some here. Oh, it's not gonna reach, so we're gonna have to move these inward then. Move it over a couple spots, then place it there. Do the same thing on the other side. Move it over a couple spaces. Try to make sure it's in the same spot. Symmetry does matter. Symmetry is stability and efficiency. And there we are. And to top it off, we're going to strut it up to some of these upper stages as well as the lower stage. But first we'll take it up as high as we can, which looks like it's going to be right at the tip of the Science Junior, right below the decoupler. It's a good spot for that. And then we'll just add one more about here and strut it to this stage beneath that one. And that should be good. Now we have a pretty solid vessel. The only thing it's missing is an antenna, but we're not going to be using antenna. We prefer to bring the science home with us. Now that looks like a moon rocket. As I mentioned before in the last episode, I like to pretty them up and make them look nice. Don't have to, but I just prefer to, so I'm going to do that real quick. Make these outer stages a little different from the central stage. Alright. Now the central stage, I'm going to make a mixture of black and white. Now it has its own unique look. And this stage, I think I'll just do that and then leave it. Actually, no, let's do that with this stage. And this stage we'll just keep solid white. Okay, now each stage has its own unique variation. I really feel as if I should be adding another strut, so I'm going to add one more down here at the bottom and connect those about here. Now it should be nice and stable. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, we can still push 67 tons with this, and we're at 64.6. So we'll save, and we're gonna bring out Valentina again, and as soon as she makes orbit, if I'm not mistaken, she should level up. If not, she's going to level up by the time we get to the moon, which will be very useful, so we can have the pro and retrograde, the ability to lock those instead of having to do it manually. But I think we are ready to go. We just need to lower this vessel down a hair, that way when it loads nice and stable. However, there is another way around that now that we have the part, and I will show you what I mean by that. We have this structural part right here, the launch stability enhancer. But before we put that on, we do need to take care of our aerodynamics. Let's go ahead and pull up the aerodynamic overlay as well as the thrust and center of mass and attach some of these fins. Now for the first one, we'll stick 4 around bottom of this and set those to ground parent, of course. Let's see where it's at. Okay, we're going to need more because we have those 4 outer stages. So we'll attach some more. We'll put one at the bottom of each one of these outer stages. Actually, let's put a couple. We'll move it over 3 spaces, place those there, go back to the center, move it over 3 spaces, and put them there. Then we just got to make sure to set those to grandparent apart, like the others. That looks a little off, doesn't it? Something isn't right about that. We need to move those over. One more. There we go. And then we need to make sure these are lined up properly still too. There we go. Now they look nice and aligned. Okay. Now we'll add the launch stability enhancer. Try to set this at the center of mass as close as possible. And then I'll show you why I stuck those fins the way I did at the bottom of these outer stages here in a moment. Once I attach these, and you look down here, once this goes off, these fins won't hit those now. Alright, so now we're looking good. We just need to fix the staging. We'll make sure the engines go off before, but right at the same time as these. That should be a good Mun rocket. Let's give it a twirl. Make sure that our pilot's in there. Okay, and launch. Now our objective is simply just to fly by the Mun, but we are going to do something more, and it's going to be a little before we get the contract for it, and preferably you wouldn't do that because you're losing out on money, but it's really not too big of an issue when you're playing on normal. If you're playing on a difficulty higher than normal, you might want to wait to do what I'm about to do until after you complete a flyby and return. But for now, let's launch the vessel. So we've already got all the science possible from the launch pad, flying a Kerbin. We do need to EVA in the upper atmosphere. That's the only bit of science we're missing from the upper atmosphere at the moment. So let's launch the vessel and let's see how it works out. Alright, so it's got just enough lift. We are on our way. Oh yeah, and if you're playing on the PS4, you can hit the center touchpad button to remove the user interface. I'm not sure what you have to do that on the Xbox though. Provides a nice view, it's good for taking pictures, so on and so forth. Let's make sure to keep an eye on our stage. Tons of delta V because we're using 4 of these, but still just enough to lift it. Say, maybe make it up to the upper atmosphere if we're lucky. Let's just take a moment to get up to 100 meters per second, and then we'll start moving over a little bit. No flippity floppy, nice and stable. Thank you, struts. And we should be at 250 meters per second by the time we have our prograde mark on that 80, nice and level with that 90-degree alignment. And close enough. We're just going to keep slowly tipping over, making sure to stay on the 90-degree alignment, because that's where we're going to need to be to transfer to the Mun. Once again, making it all the way over to the 90-degree angle. By the time we hit at least 500 meters per second, up to about 1,000 meters per second. Once we get there, lock our SAS, let it do the rest. We have a nice window for Min-Miss over there looking at us, but that's not what we're going to do. Let's go to the, oh, time to stage. Alright, let's lose those 4 outer stages and a nice core left cross, activate that engine. We still have quite a bit of delta V left, and we're not even in space yet, but we're on our way. Now once that gets close to 65,000, 70,000 meters, we'll go full sideways. But let's keep an eye on our vessel, make sure we're nice and stable still. Looking back to the map. Alright, we're getting close. Eventually, launching like this will just become a very common thing. Alright, now let's go completely sideways. Maybe even down about -5. Make sure that doesn't start taking away from our apoapsis. And that we are on a 90-degree alignment. Now we'll just let it burn. And enjoy the view. By the time this stage is done, we should be fairly close to about 100 meters on our apoapsis. Hopefully. Nope. Okay. We need to move it up just a smidgen there. Make sure that we're on the 90-degree. We'll finish using this stage to circularize. Alright, and there's our periapsis poking out. Love that 100,000 meter for that reason. Let's go on ahead and time warp over there. Stop a little bit before, that way we have time to move this big hulking beast now over here to our prograde marker. It's going to be a little slower and harder to move over to it where it's much larger now, where by now we would only have that one stage left with the R1A. Let's lock prograde, and as soon as we get close to that, let's burn. No. Let's slow it down just a little bit. Don't want to push it too far ahead of us. Want a nice, even 100,000 by 100,000 orbit, if we can do that. Still too much thrust. Okay. Let it get a little closer. Pick back up a little bit on the thrust. And slow it down a little bit. Just playing it by sight. It's getting close. And we have a nice stable orbit. Now, to go to the Mun, right now we can't focus on the Mun, set it as a target or anything because we haven't upgraded our tracking station. So we're gonna have to completely eyeball this thing. And in order to do that, we want to make sure the Mun is coming over across the horizon, which will look something like this. So we'll make sure that our vessel is somewhat in line with the Mun here. Go ahead and highlight the Mun, that way we can keep track of it. And once we pass Kerbin and the Mun comes up over the horizon, we'll begin setting ourselves up for our maneuver. Most people recommend that right as the Mun is coming over the horizon, that's when you're supposed to burn. I don't agree. I think it's better to burn closer to the end of your line, where you can actually draw a straight line to the Mun. But for now, we're going to kind of go in between those two recommendations. Now, the Mun's coming over the horizon now, so let's fast forward just a tad bit, time warp a little bit. There, that's halfway between what most people recommend and what I recommend. That's where we're going to burn. So let's move back over to prograde. And as soon as we hit that prograde mark, we're going to lock it, and we're going to throttle up to full throttle, and use the rest of this stage to start the transfer to the Mun, making sure that we are once again at the 90-degree alignment mark, and we're starting to burn. We still have half the stage left. It's a good bit of delta V. We just need to keep an eye on this, where it's not going to show us crossing the path of the Mun and where we're going to be crossing the path of the Mun, and we're going to have to eyeball it. It's very important to note that the altitude of the Mun is 11.4 kilometers, or 11,400,000 meters. But once we get about where that is, we need to just extend it out a little further, say 12.2. that should do. We could end up smashing right into the Mun surface or passing right by it. We just have to be very careful. So let's quick save just in case anything happens. And going ahead and time warp about halfway out to the Mun because we have some science to get first. Let's move it on out. And we just lost contact with Kerbin where we have no communications parts on this vessel. Let's go ahead and get our science now. For now we're just going to get the temperature logged and the barometric pressure reading and then a crew report. And let's make sure that we're keeping some charge as well. So right now we have some pretty good sunlight coming in. We're not losing power. Alright, did we get that crew report? Okay, it's showing review report. That means we have the crew report. So let's EVA, but let's turn this vessel this way so we can see what we're doing. Like the EVA using this method, you don't have to. You can use the EVA down on the portrait. Either way works. Alright, now let's get our EVA report from high over Kerbin. It's a little tricky. Sometimes you have to find the sweet spot. Okay, there we go. There's EVA in space high over Kerbin. Let's go ahead and collect that crew report so we can get another one. Grab the temperature data and the barometric data. We're going to leave the mystery goo alone for now. We can always get the mystery goo science if we have to on the way back, but we're saving that for 2 different instances around the Mun. Let's get back in our vessel, save again, and let's see where we're going to end up. Now, we're not wanting to time warp in too hot. It should slow us down automatically though. But let's find out how this is going to go. Alright, so we should have a nice line on the Mun as it passes under us. Oh yeah, okay. So that's actually pretty preferable. However, we're going to bring it in just a little closer. That way we can get some science from the space around the Mun, as well as some science close to the Mun. Alright, once we hit that retro mark, we can lock our SAS on that, and then bring this in just a tad bit closer. Say down to about 14,000 meters. Six, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. 12,966. That will do. Let's go ahead and save. Now, let's check our achievements. Okay, so we've flown by the Mun, and we have left Kerbin. Our contract is halfway complete. Now, since we are in the space around the Mun now, if I'm not mistaken, let's get some science again. This should be high above the Mun, just like we were with Kerbin just now. Excellent. Let's go ahead and get that. Let's get our crew report and our temperature reading, and we will break out the first mystery goo for this one. Then we will go EVA and collect all of that. Let's go ahead and take the crew report and the rest of the data out so we can get some more. Once we get close, collect that mystery goo, the barometric reading, and then all we'll have left to get is the EVA report, and then we'll hop back in our vessel, and then it'll be time to warp as close to that periapsis as we can get to, maybe a little before, but let's also highlight our vessel so we can track its altitude. Once it hits about 20,000 meters, we're going to back off and start collecting signs. Let's also go ahead and save while we're warping over. Now it should slow it down from 100 times warp. Well, actually, let's go ahead and speed up just a tad bit more. Alright, now we're moving. Now, I think it would slow it down on its own, but just in case, we're going to ease up, take it in nice and slow. Okay, once we hit 50,000, we'll slow it down just a little more. And again, we're looking for about 20,000 meters. We'll see what happens once we hit it. If it doesn't slow it down naturally, we'll stop it ourselves. Okay, let's go ahead and stop. We are in the dark. It's going to be a little hard to see. Hopefully highlighting the parts will help. But let's go on ahead and check our Science Junior. We are in the space near the Mun. That's where we want to be for the Science Junior science. And the rest of this, including the other mystery goo. Let's go ahead and collect that. Our barometer, thermometer after that. And then we'll collect our crew report. We've already lost 5,000 meters. We're getting close to that 12,999 mark. Let's get our EVA report. Get back in there. We'll collect the science here shortly. And close those doors. Alright, we are swiftly approaching the periapsis. We want to be pointing retrograde so we can pull off something and get it out of the way while we're here. Once we hit that retrograde mark, let's go on ahead and lock it. And we still have a little bit of time before we hit the periapsis. Now keep an eye up here when you do this, for that to light up. Start burning your retro, and as soon as it lights up, back off. And go up here, and we have achieved orbit around the Mun. Now, let's go on ahead and clear that off, and flip around to where we are prograde. And once we hit prograde, we will lock. And then go on ahead and extend our orbit back out again. It might be a little too far, but we'll find out once we leave the influence of the Mun. That's likely going to set us on a path that extends us out between the Mun and Minmus, but we will find out. We have plenty of fuel, we can still make it home. But for now that we can see, let's go on ahead and EVA again and collect all this science from near the Mun. That should be everything. Let's get back in our vessel, and then we will time warp. And let's see where this takes us. It should automatically back off once we leave the influence of the Mun. We will see. Alright, good. Now, that takes us a little out beyond the influence of Kerbin. Or, yeah, out beyond the influence of Kerbin to Minmus space. But Minmus isn't close enough, I don't believe. might be able to catch it on the way back, but if not, let's go on ahead and see if there's anything else we can get out of this. We might make contact with a mun again. That might be dangerous. Let's find out. Just conserving fuel and seeing what we can pull off while we're out here. Looks like we're gonna be just shy of the mun. Oh yeah, okay, so we're just gonna fly ahead of the mun here. Once we get past the mun's line here, we're going to go back out here to the apoapsis and stop the time warp and bring it to retrograde. Now, there are two ways that you can make this return happen. You can either go ahead and burn retrograde until it's down to about 45 to 35,000 meters above the surface of Kerbin and go ahead and come home now. But we have quite a bit of fuel and not exactly a fan of wasting that. And this stage is not going to cooperate in the atmosphere of Kerbin, so we can't exactly just land the vessel with that stage intact. So let's go ahead and reduce this down a little bit. Let's say there, about 500,000 meters, and we'll bring ourselves back in. Make sure not to smash into the mun on the way home. I think we're going to clear the mun nice and easily, but we'll see. It's coming back around. Okay, yeah, we're going to clear it. Slow it down as we are coming in faster and faster. Once we hit that periapsis, we'll likely be pointing prograde, so we'll have to turn around to retro. Honestly, that's not a bad re-entry speed. It could be much worse, but it's still faster than we want to be going. Oh, come on. Get control. Get control. There we go. Once we hit retro, we'll lock retro. We'll get a little closer to that periapse. Highlight our apoapsis so we can keep an eye on it. Okay, we're moving in on the periapse, but I'm still going to fast forward a little bit because we're not moving in fast enough for me. Okay, now we are right where we need to be now. As soon as it hits that line, let's activate the engine and bring that in. Oh, we just finished that stage, so let's lose that one. Go back to the map. Highlight those again. Now we're really wanting to keep an eye on the periapsis. It's going to whip around and trade spots with that apoapsis. It'll be on the day side, which is preferable. That way we can see where we're going to land instead of being in the dark. YouTube is pretty infamous for being pretty dark for some reason. Alright, there they go. Now we need to focus on bringing that periapsis down to about 45 to 35,000 meters. Let's see, 100 and 6, 5, 4, 3. There we go. Since we're nice and close around Kerbin, I'm going to bring it down to 36 or 35, and then we're going to wrap around. Once we hit about 100,000 meters, I'm going to stop the time warp so I can point at retrograde. A little closer. There we go. Alright, let's go ahead and exit the time warp. Ah, so much better. More control. Okay. Let's point retro, lock, and finish our time warp. Now this time I'm going to remember. I'm going to rotate the vessel, and very quickly, because it's very dangerous, you can lose your Kerbin, or they can burn up. You'll see them moving up like that. Just move them down a little bit, and then grab that EVA report from the upper atmosphere as quickly as possible, starting to burn up. There we go. And then point retro again, start your burn, use up the rest of this fuel as quickly as possible, even if you have to time warp a little bit. There we go. Cancel that time warp so we can point it back to retro before we start burning up, preferably. 4, 3.5, 3, 2.5, 2, 1.5, 1, and point up a little bit, kick the stage, and then go back to retro and put it on surface, which it should have already been on. Just in time. Okay. Let's keep an eye on that stage we just kicked. And turn SAS off now that we're feeling the effect of the atmosphere. Where'd that stage go? Okay, there it is. We are starting to skirt ahead of it just a little bit. Now it's just business as usual. Let's land this thing. Surprised that hasn't blown up yet. Still pointing retrograde too. Good for that. We should be seeing it back on the ground here shortly. For a moment, it's still gonna explode, but alright, we are down below 20,000 meters. Start to cool off a little bit by about 15,000. We should be good to deploy the parachutes. Alright, there goes the drogues. This thing is going to be flying right past us here soon as we slow down. I'm gonna go ahead and use the other one as well. Let's see just how much that slows us down. We're gonna be landing on land this time. It's not too high. We can get some science while we're flying above these grasslands or highlands. I'm not sure which. I think it might be the highlands. Once these fully deploy, we'll take care of that. I just want to watch that lower stage and see it land and explode. It's fun. There it goes. Now we're starting to lose enough speed for it to be a little faster than us. Getting pretty close. Okay, there goes the drogues. About 500 meters early. I guess we lost track of the other booster. Oh, still, oh, there it is. And boom. Nice. Okay. Let's keep an eye on our main parachute. As soon as it deploys, we have to move pretty quickly. Alright. Let's get the science. Got some temperature readings from the highlands. Okay. We'll take that, and we'll get these barometric readings. And we'll get a crew report. Oh, we still have a crew report in there. Okay. So let's EVA. And we'll go on ahead and take all that data out of there so we can take that crew report as well. And we'll get our EVA report while flying above the Kerbin Highlands. Pop back in there. Grab that crew report. And then we will pop back out so we can grab that crew report, freeing up some space for another one as soon as we land. Now let's land. Fast forward a little bit. If I want to guess, I'd say it's going to be at about 500 meters. We'll find out. Oh wow, it's going to be a little higher than that. Okay, maybe 700, 800. And stop the time warp. Alright, about 788. Let's go on ahead and get some more science from the Highlands. Now that we've landed, we need to go ahead and get that crew report. Go EVA. Let's take the data out of the thermometer and the barometer. And since we're already out here, let's go ahead and get that EVA report. Hop back in here and get our science from the thermometer and the barometer now that they're emptied. If I'm not mistaken, we should have all that we can get. Let's review that report. Okay, so that's from landing at the Highlands. Okay, so that's quite a bit of science. We have returned from a flyby and orbit of the Mun. Let's check our achievements out here. We have explored the Mun. Quite a bit of money for that. Let's see what this one says. A return trip from the Mun. And we have returned from a flyby and orbit of the Mun, fulfilling the parameters of that contract. Nice. Let's recover that vessel. I'm still trying to keep this within an hour in duration for the episode. We have 13 minutes left. Not sure what to do with that. We have just gained 387 science, bringing us up to 428. All that science we just got from that mission. We could have done more. We could have flown by Menmus too. We had plenty of Delta V to do it, but let's focus on the Mun for now. Focus on contract by contract. We just happened to have over-engineered the vessel a little bit, and we'll leave it at that. Okay. And look at that, 533,000 funds. And now Valentina is also level 1. That'll be nice. Okay. So let's take that science and see what we can do with it. Actually, no. Let's go to mission control and find out what we're going to be doing next. Okay, rendezvousing 2 vessels. So that's launching a vessel and then launching another one and meeting together in space with those 2 vessels. We'll accept that contract. And now we should start to get some other unique ones, like the science data from the space around the Mun here, planting a flag on the Mun, and science data from the surface of the Mun. Let's go on ahead and take science data from the space around the Mun and plant a flag on the Mun, as well as science data from the surface of the Mun. Now we should have plenty of time to complete these. 10 years for that one, and that one. This one, indefinite timeline. We can finish it when we want. So now we have some goals. And with the rendezvous 2 vessels around orbit of Kerbin, we're also going to try to knock out docking 2 vessels, because once we rendezvous those 2 vessels, the contract for docking 2 vessels should pop up, and we can go back to the Space Center, grab that contract, and then return to the vessels, and then go ahead and dock those vessels to complete those that contract while we're already rendezvoused. But we'll get to that here soon. Let's go ahead and do some science tech. Let's see what we're gonna need for that. We're gonna need that docking port right there, the docking port junior. So let's go on ahead and use 90 to unlock that. And let's see what else we can get. We're also gonna need RCS and RCS tanks. That way we can dock a little more smoothly with a little more control. But we can't get that until we get the flight control tech, which is also good. These winglets are particularly useful, and the smaller reaction wheels will come in handy. So we'll go on ahead and get that, and use 90 more to get the RCS, as well as the larger reaction wheel and the new lander can, plus a new pod. So let's get that. Now we still have 203 science, and the focus is going to be rendezvousing, docking, and then landing on the Mun. and we're going to want to take more than one carbon down with us to the Mun, maybe, so we can use some of this breaking ground science once we unlock it. We already have the goo monitor, we just need the control station for that, as well as some power, which we already have unlocked too. So, we have enough science to do some of these things. For now, let's focus on the docking and rendezvousing portion. Well, it looks like we already have everything we need to pull off the rendezvous and docking. So we'll preemptively unlock some of the things. We can only unlock about 2 more of these. And we need to weigh out which ones are the most important ones for now until we get more science, which we won't really be able to get a whole lot more science the way we're playing until we land on the Mun, outside of some small science unlocked from the contracts upon completion. So, let's see, we have this pod now. We need the heat shield and some landing gear, so let's keep that one in mind. Don't really need any of this stuff for our goals ahead of us, so we don't need that one. We won't need this one. We will need that one, but we'll also need this one as well. So there's landing and space exploration. The fuel systems could help, but we're not going to get those just yet. Propulsion systems just yet either. We might need that heavy rocketry though, but since it's a might and not a necessary, let's go ahead and unlock the landing and the space exploration. Yes, we're gonna go on ahead and unlock that. And now we can start to build towards our next missions, which are rendezvous, docking, and landing on the Mun. Let's go on ahead and save. That gives us a little bit more money too. Let's see if there's anything we should spend it on. I think we should go ahead and upgrade the tracking station so we can see where we're going now. And with that, we should maybe, no, it is not time to update the R&D or upgrade the R&D facility just yet. Let's see, our VAB is fine, tracking station is good, mission control is still good for now. Our launch pad, 140 tons, that's plenty. We've already upgraded the astronaut complex. I think we're good for now, so that's about all we can really do in this episode. Let's just make sure, okay, some more new stuff. Let's go on ahead and take that Bring Munstone Back With You contract as well. Now we have 5 contracts to complete, 10 years for most of them, looking good. I think we're gonna go ahead and call this one a little early, 5 minutes early, that's not too bad. On our next episode we will do some rendezvous and docking maneuvers and try to show everybody how to do that. But until then, now that we have that new contract, let's save again. And we'll leave it at there. And I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.